this week on the Right Wing Insanity Report, I have a very special guest with me, Steve Monticelli, who writes for Rolling Stone and other publications, covers right-wing extremism in the state of Texas. Welcome, Steve.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to have you on basically to discuss drag shows and right-wingers, because this has really erupted into a thing. And I think we saw the peak of it this past week in your neck of the woods in Texas, in Roanoke. But the last few months, there's been a build-up to this. We have seen Proud Boys basically showing up at drag shows here in California and other places. One of them brought a gun to one of the drag shows in Sparks, Nevada. But the theme is the same, that drag queens are basically groomers, that they're pedophiles, and the parents that irresponsibly bring them to these events are engaging in some sort of child abuse. When in reality, the situation is that these are characters, right? Drag queens are characters. So when they're reading books or performing during a brunch, it's just entertainment. There's no pedophile grooming crap going on, but they're convinced. So walk us through a little bit of what happened in Roanoke this past week.
Sure. So as you know, folks who know anything about drag shows are aware, and for those who aren't, drag shows have been going on for decades, part of the LGBTQ community, broadly speaking. It's part of the culture. And just like a lot of forms of entertainment, they can range between, you know, family friendly and raunchy. Dancing, comedy, all those sorts of elements, storytelling are brought into a drag show. And just like any of those sorts of media and forms of art can, you know, not be disturbing to certain sorts of people's minds, this particular drag show in Roanoke was explicitly designed to be something that families could go to. So, you know, they explicitly said ahead of time, clothes are remaining on. There's no going to be like skimpy outfits or erotic sort of dancing or anything, which sometimes may occur at a cabaret or any form, or even, you know, cheerleading dance performance.
Exactly.
So, you know, they were pretty explicit in that they wanted this to be, you know, like a joyful, relatively wholesome event. And so this was held at Anderson Distillery and Grill. It's a family-owned distillery and grill in Roanoke, Texas, which is a relatively smallish town not far from Fort Worth. And what happened was that this drag brunch had been planned ahead of time. And when it was announced publicly, it wasn't long after that that right-wing groups like this one called Protect Texas Kids picked it up and basically started pushing it out into their audiences and saying, you know, we should go protest this and show our disapproval. Now, if you've been paying attention over the past several months, as you alluded to, there's been a pattern of this all over the country, but particularly in North Texas, where quite literally the same people, same groups continue to organize these sorts of protests outside of drag brunches that often have turned really ugly in terms of the sorts of things that people say, really awful slurs, horrible, you know, even murder fantasies have been caught on tape. And here in Roanoke, this day that this drag brunch occurred this past weekend, a lot of the same people ended up showing up. A known Proud Boy showed up. A member of This Is Texas Freedom Force showed up. And they basically stood across the street and menaced them. And on occasion, you know, groups of people would try to come across the street and, you know, antagonize the people standing
Well,
outside.
in fact, you have a video of a guy doing precisely that, came across the street and was harassing attendees. Let's play that clip.
Oh, whoa! Hang on. Stand right there. I got it on camera. That's a hey, Blue! Hey, she just spit on me. She just spat on me.
Well, what did you call them earlier when you were talking to them? Didn't you call them a bunch of fucking pussies?
No, I called them pussies.
Yeah, I mean these people here.
No, just the ones that are wielding AR-47s.
So what are you here to do today?
I'm here to support people that don't indoctrinate and groom little 8-year-old kids. Credulous.
So why do you need to get in someone's face?
I wasn't. I was walking over here to talk somewhere. I was walking over here to talk to somebody, and this one, and the other goes, get away, you can.
Who do you need to talk to?
I didn't. I wanted to go talk to somebody. None of your fucking business who I want to talk to. Okay. All right. By law, you don't have to. I know, because I thought this was a public sidewalk. I'm being peaceful. I was just going to talk to someone.
Pedophiles fucking close.
Look, I was just going to talk to someone. I gave my 5 of them goes, get off of here. You can't be here. You know, I'm sorry. This is a free time.
Okay, some crazy stuff there. You also posted some photos of the event. I want to show those photos because it shows quite clearly that there are two groups. The counter protesters that are, I guess, protecting or in front of the restaurant way, way outnumber the guys on the other side. And this guy alluded to, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but I just want to briefly touch on this. The guy alluded to the folks having AR-47s. There are some leftists out there with some guns, but we're going to talk about that in a second. That is the case. And of course, the right wing is losing their mind over this because only the right wing can have guns. But, you know, in your opinion, I wanted to talk about the Christian nationalist part of this conversation. This guy's, you know, obviously alluding that all of these folks are constantly alluding to that. What part is religious, extreme religious nationalism playing in this whole entire mess against drag queen shows?
So at least here in North Texas, I would say that a good portion of it comes from religious extremism. There are plenty of Christian churches and you know, congregations around here that are welcoming and inclusive. So that's not who I'm talking about. There are people who are, as you mentioned, you know, Christian nationalists or nationalist Christians, whatever you want to call them. And they are the ones that I would say are pushing the most heated rhetoric and are organizing a lot of these events. Protect Texas Kids is the organization I had mentioned that had organized this event and had called for it, as well as several others that occurred during Pride Month, which I had written about for the Real News. And those incidents, you know, same sorts of characters keep coming out. And the organizer of that that group, Kelly Neidert, has described herself on Twitter as a, you know, Christian fascist. She's never, you know, sort of walked that back or condemned Christian fascism or anything along those lines. So, you know, I think between that and other things, like, for example, one person I see at a lot of these events who's also shown up to, you know, pro-abortion access protests and harangued and, you know, thrown slurs at people. They describe themselves as a Francisco Franco fangirl. So it's pretty blatant. You know, it's there is an element of people who are open Christian nationalists and religious extremists. And then obviously there are also the, you know, sort of more militant fascist elements among those groups. You know, are there perhaps some people who are getting duped and kind of caught up in all of this because they don't really know what's going on? Yeah, sure. But that's not where the energy is coming from, as I see it.
Right. That is not where the energy is coming from. And in fact, I recall seeing some videos shot, not by you, by somebody else, of another drag queen event down there where a guy was literally wearing a swastika necklace as part of the, and I think he was also with the Kelly Neidert, is it Neidert group?
Neidert, I believe is
Neidert. Okay. So, so clearly she's driving that. Clearly she hangs out with extreme factions. You also shared an activist body cam footage in which she was surrounding herself with some known Proud Boys. This was back, I believe, in June. Pardon me. Let's play that clip.
I've been to fucking jail. I will fucking go back, motherfucker. Not fucking afraid.
Hey, calm down. It's okay. You're shaking like a little pussy bitch.
You can't hold the camera pro like that, dude. It's a body camera. Come on, buddy.
I did 6 months fucking locked up, motherfucker. I'll fucking do it again, happily. Just to know I beat your fucking bitch ass, you fucking pedophile fucking.
You protect children.
That's all you got. That's all you got is your little fucking pussy fucking smile. Your little fucking pussy smile. Your little bitch ass camera fucking filming me, because that's all you fucking got. That's all you fucking got. It's your bullshit. Because that's all you got is bullshit.
I mean, I've heard this rhetoric myself many occasion. You know, in fact, I just had a piece that came out in Daily Dot on ghost guns, and I had to reach out to that particular Proud Boy for comment, and his response to me was, "Are you a Jew?" So these guys, that when they say they're not racist, they're lying. They absolutely are racist. They're becoming more radicalized, I believe. what's the connection with the Proud Boys and this group?
So that guy, he's not, as I understand it, I haven't been able to particularly link that guy to the Proud Boys, but as you could see in the background, there were Proud Boys that were there in Arlington that day. So that gentleman is named Ben Ballard. We actually know who he is. He's a member of an extremist militia known as This Is Texas Freedom Force. He, in fact, is the man who was carrying the Negan bat outside of the Roanoke drag brunch.
Which we're going to get to in a second.
I will get to that. I've also seen photos of him with a sitting representative, Brian Slayton, a Texas state representative, who is the guy who wants to ban drag brunches where kids can be there. So, you know, I'm not going to say much more about that. All I'll say is we know who this guy is, and there's this nexus of extremist groups that continue to be attracted to these protests that often can turn violent. In fact, in Roanoke, you know, there was footage from the anti-fascist security folks that showed one of the LGBTQ people headbutting another person and assaulting them.
Well, we have that video too. Let's go ahead and play that.
Go back to your side. There's no need for this. Go back to your side. Go back to your side. Hey, chill.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. So that woman headbutts the other one. It's just wild stuff. So what preceded that? They were just coming over and harassing these folks and it just escalated into that?
There's a longer video that shows exactly like the lead up to that, but more or less, yes. You know, people coming across and trying to get in people's faces and yelling and, you know, trying to get closer to the event. You know, for what exact reason, I'm not sure.
Hard to say. All right. So one of the live streamers that was there on the right wing side actually referred himself as a white supremacist. I'm pro-white. I'm right wing. That you shared it. I wanted to play that clip too, so people get another idea of who we're dealing with here.
Are you on Vice News?
What was that?
Are you on Vice News?
No, I'm on YouTube. I'm with YouTube. I'm a sole journalist for IP2 News. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but we're a right wing, pro-white. And everybody, obviously, except, you know, the people that are here with Antifa. We're just, like, trying to see, like, how people...
Right. So that was in Arlington, right? Yeah. And, yes, exactly. It just demonstrates the sort of, you know, people that are attracted to this rhetoric.
Right. So basically what I'm understanding here, let's clarify for the audience. These guys are traveling around. There's a group of them. It's Kelly's group, the Texas militia group, some random Proud Boys here and there, and they've been just basically showing up at these drag brunches and causing problems.
Yeah, you know, and there are people who, you know, haven't necessarily been showing up to all of them. Maybe they're only local to that particular location. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing a similar, actually, you know, familiar cast of characters across several of these events over the past several months.
Yeah, same here in California. And it's just crazy how all of a sudden they've latched on to drag queens as being a thing. Like you mentioned earlier, this has been part of the LGBTQ community for a very long time. I remember going to see drag shows, you know, gosh, you know, in the 90s or whatever. And they can be very funny and entertaining. So why all of a sudden they've decided that this is pedophile grooming is beyond me. I don't know why that has taken up steam. But it's obviously becoming more escalated and it's spreading across the country. So
I would argue that it's a part of a pretty calculated propaganda effort to try to tie together a number of issues that are wedge issues around race and LGBTQ identity with children. And it's, you know, it doesn't take a genius to call your political opponents a pedophile.
Right. Right. And that's the terms that they use, right? Pedophile. I mean, they did the same thing with Disney executives, you know, when the Florida Don't Say Gay bill was passing. So anybody that is remotely related to any sort of pro-gay rights positioning gets called a groomer. That's just where the language is at. All right, let's turn our attention to, this is just crazy to me, Negan, remember from Walking Dead?
Yeah,
Negan cosplay.
I never watched the show that far, but I've been learning quickly over the past week about it.
Okay, so Negan was one of the bad guys in Walking Dead, and he had a bat that he even named the bat, and at one point had barbed wire wrapped around the bat. So when I saw this photo, it is absolutely what jumped into my brain. So let's show this photo because it's absolutely nuts. Okay, so this guy here, he was the one you were mentioning earlier. Now, he was with the Proud Boys in that previous video and was the one that was saying all that kind of crazy rhetoric, correct? Same guy?
Right. Same guy.
Okay, he's with a militia group known as the what?
This is Texas Freedom Force.
Okay. That's crazy. So you can
That's
see
what the
that.
patch says. You can see, that patch. If you really zoom in, it says this is Texas Freedom Force. He's even self-identifying.
Right. Okay. So now there was a couple of identities made on him. His name is Ben Ballard. He is a member, obviously, Texas Freedom Force. I wanted to show these two videos. The gentleman on the right ran for office, or he is already a state rep.
He's a state
in
rep.
the second. So he is there posing with his gun with a state rep. Brian. So what is Brian's story for folks that don't know?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not super deep into the horse race politics in Texas, but what I can tell you is that he has been on the razor's edge of trying to pass and push these anti-LGBTQ, anti-drag show pieces of legislation in Texas, incidentally.
Okay. So I went to his, his Twitter account, and he says he's a Christian conservative, proud Texan, defender of liberty, representative for House District 2. So defender of liberty. I always appreciate how these guys that want to take away the freedoms of others say they're defending liberty. They just don't seem to think that applies to everybody, right? And speaking of things that don't apply to everybody, I want to change course on the same event, though, but let's talk about the Antifa derangement syndrome that broke out across the right-wing spectrum over this event because some of the anti-fascists there that were protecting the restaurant, so to speak, had guns. Now, what I don't understand about this, Steve, is this is gun culture on the right? They are saying the Second Amendment is, has to be defended. We have to eliminate what small amounts of gun control laws that we already have. Why all of a sudden are they shifting gear and they're horrified that the other side has now decided to be like, okay, this is the world you created. We're going to exercise our Second Amendment right as well.
Well, frankly, I don't think you should grant them the, grace of having consistency according to your own principles, because they won't.
Right.
According to their principles, they're consistent, which is just tribalism and, rules for me and punishments for thee, or protections for me and rules for thee. And, in these cases, I think that's what's happening here. I don't care that much or focus too much on the hypocrisy, because I understand that the hypocrisy is only in my eyes in terms of what my values are. They don't operate under the same principles.
Right. So just no consistency there. They just want their side to be armed. I wanted to play this video of one of these guys. He made a TikTok about it because apparently this is just mind-blowing to him. So let's go ahead and play that.
Well, now, it would appear that the feds have been handing out a few $5,000 gift cards in and around the Roanoke, Texas area recently. Because I see that a bunch of Antifa kids emerged from their parents' basements with all kinds of new shit, looking tactical as fuck. Not really, but they're giving it a shot. I don't know. At first glance, it doesn't look like any of those ARs have ever even been fired. And they look pretty dry, too. And then they formed a skirmish line, I guess, to protect some grooming activity that was going on behind them. You can't convince me that these kids bought any of this stuff with their own money. And I mean, I don't think their $10,000 student loan debt forgiveness package has come through yet. And I don't think it's plausible that they borrowed those ARs from a conservative uncle to use for the protest. Doesn't seem right. Where are they getting this shit? Oh, I think we know.
Okay, so now we have gotten to the part of the story where the FBI is actually giving assault rifles to members of anti-fascist groups. Is this guy serious?
I think so. I mean, he seems to be going through it. He seems to be working through it live. And his judgment, I believe, is that it is not possible in his head for there to be people on the left that not only have guns but have enough money to have guns and probably have good jobs and are smart and know what they're doing with those guns because they actually are, trained and disciplined.
Right.
I don't know. That's mind-boggling because, in the logic of fascists, though, it's not inconsistent in their mind to say the left is both a bunch of weakling, soy, cuck, losers with blue hair, but then also that they are dangerous and they're destroying the country. And so, of course, the feds have to be involved if they're actually starting to get worried, because they don't conceive of it as possible, except in this like weird abstract sense. Like when it actually becomes real, suddenly it breaks their brains.
Yeah, it's wild how it breaks their brains. Let's turn to Matt Walsh, because of course he had to have multiple tweets about the situation. Yeah, I don't know if you saw these. It was literally Antifa with guns outside of a drag queen event. Once again, a leftist demands that we don't acknowledge the plain reality. So, okay. Which is true, but we go through.
What is he saying? What is he? Yeah, I mean, there were. What is he saying? There were people there.
He's acknowledging that, and you click through to the beginning, and he says, also the people outside of the drag show in Texas with guns were Antifa. So the premise of the question isn't even correct. So he's responding to this guy saying, why are you upset about this? And then the original tweet actually says the drag queens traumatize them more. Any other questions? Meaning the drag queens are more traumatic for these kids than anybody that is a gun or any right winger across the street that's harassing them,
Wow.
And this is a guy who identifies as a theocratic fascist in his bio. So
yeah, I mean, pretzel logic. It's interesting to watch it happen, live once again, but it's difficult for them. And the only explanation in their mind that makes sense is, no, actually, it was the people who were defending the thing that are responsible for it being bad in the first place.
Right. Because they just
doesn't make sense. It's ignorant of the total, like the whole chronology of what's happened here and why this has started happening in response to actual threats that have, shown themselves in the past.
Right.
It's a logical response, I think, for a group that feels vulnerable and threatened. And after the drag show, one of the drag queens thanked the group for keeping people safe.
Right. And so you were there out front. Did you have people coming into the show? Were they made uncomfortable by the anti-fascists outside? Were they okay with it? I did read another tweet where they said they were walking people to their cars to protect them from the right-wing extremists.
People I think were kind of like, huh. It was like, it was like, interesting. This is new. They weren't like, the people who were there weren't upset. I think they were actually thankful because they were able to actually just enjoy the event. The event went off without a hitch. They sold out. They sold out all the food. They literally ran out of food. So I think generally, I didn't hear anybody say, this is bad. Like anybody who was actually there say, I understand why they're doing it, but I don't like the way they're doing it. No one was acting that way because they saw what was across the street. They saw what was happening.
Right. All right. Let's turn to our favorite gun nut and get her hot take on this. Lauren Boebert had a tweet about it, and you're not going to believe this.
Haven't even seen it yet.
Okay, this is great. A kid-friendly drag show in Texas was guarded by masked Antifa guards armed with AR-15s. Remember, they only want your guns. They want to use theirs to protect their depravity.
Okay, wow.
Well, I mean, that's just Olympic level projection right there.
Sure. That, and also this is what happens whenever you have no knowledge of anything about politics or ideology or history. You collapse everything into your, myopic little frame, and you don't understand that the people who are out there with guns probably don't actually have the viewpoints on gun control that Lauren Boebert thinks they do.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just the reality of the fact.
It's just it, right? they just can't accept the idea that there might be people on the left that own guns. And I don't know why that premise is so crazy to them. I mean, and really, in a way, this is the culture that they helped create. Did they honestly believe at the end of the day that they could keep pushing for more people showing up at open carry protests, people showing up and shooting protesters at BLM protests, et cetera, go down the list of how we've become more radicalized at protests? Did they actually think that it would eventually not also start happening on the left? I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's been ratcheted up now for a couple of years.
I mean, not only that, but it's just disingenuous because it's an obvious ploy to try to pretend that there's no actual middle ground. Because I know a lot of leftists who would say, yeah, we should probably have some more common sense regulations around guns.
Right.
It's not like we could get rid of all of them.
Well, that's correct. That's the real nuanced position, isn't it? We get there's a Second Amendment. A lot of left people I know actually own guns. I have no problem saying that. And they do want to also have common sense gun laws. So you would think that this is a moment. You would think that this is a moment when these folks in that world would be like, oh, okay, so they're also buying guns now too. Maybe they don't want to come and get our guns. Maybe this
not
is
to digress.
Yeah.
Not to digress too much, but it's like, yeah, I have a gun. I have more than one gun. And it's insane that in Texas, I can buy a gun from someone without a license, without any check, legally, do all these things. It's insane. You know, like it's not that I don't want to own guns. It's that I have to have a license to have a car and I have to have registration and all that shit. And that things can kill people too.
Exactly.
So it makes goddamn sense, just plain sense. But of course, you know, people like Lauren Boebert, they aren't going to be arguing in good faith.
No, obviously. But I would thought this would be the one person that would be like, okay, some lefties have guns now too. They get it. Cool.
No, I mean, they're all secretly Reagan. You know, it's like they would consider finding ways probably to try to take away guns from the left if they could.
100% agree. I 100% agree with you on there. All right, let's turn our attention to Fox News because Fox News was having an entire Twitter meltdown. So they started out with this headline. It's shocking. Lawmaker reacts to armed Antifa showing up at a kid-friendly drag show. So that was the first one.
Oh, and guess who it is? Brian Slayton.
Oh, okay. So the house guy that we talked about earlier. All right. So that was him making that comment. And then we went to, it's shocking again. Masked, black-clad Antifa protesters showed up brandishing weapons at the Sunday morning drag brunch. And I want to clarify something here of that headline as well. They're not the protesters here. The right-wing extremists are the protesters here. They're the ones that are...
They were basically just security. They weren't even protesting. You know, they weren't holding signs. They weren't chanting. This wasn't a protest of like armed people. It was just people providing security to an event.
Yeah. All right. So then Fox went on to just to completely repost that headline and article multiple times that day. I want to turn to a guy named Tim Young. Tim Runs His Mouth is his Twitter handle. I've seen him kind of post crazy stuff before. He's a writer for the Washington Times, which is a right-wing rag. All right, so Tim Young has this to say. So the crowd just wants to be treated like normal people. Held a kid-friendly drag show yesterday in Texas that was guarded by heavily armed and masked Antifa because all of that is totally normal. Got it.
So once again, these disingenuous bugs are only focusing on one side of the story. You know, if you look at my coverage, I talk about the fact that there were armed people who were there. It's absurd for these people to try and pretend like this just came out of nowhere. It's disgusting, frankly.
Right, and
it's desperate.
They're ignoring the bat guy. They're ignoring all of these other things, right? They're just really laser focused on, oh my God, Antifa has guns. You know, that's.
And they're so laser focused that they'll quote someone who was banned from Twitter for saying, you know, let's start rounding up LGBTQ people. It's insane. That was Kelly Neidert. Kelly Neidert was banned from Twitter for saying we should start rounding up people who attend Pride events. And then Fox goes and quotes her and uses her photos and shit. What is that?
That's irresponsible.
Deeply irresponsible.
All right. So, and again, let's turn now to our favorite Trump sycophant. I don't know what else to call this guy. Jack Posobiec. I can never say his name correctly.
Posobiec or whatever. Posobiec,
yeah.
maybe.
Of course, he had to get in on the fray. This is a guy that has, in the same way Andy No has, often posted clipped out video that doesn't tell accurate stories about Antifa, trying to make Antifa, be the bad guys always with no right-wing violence. So very biased. So he had this to say: armed left-wing paramilitaries, we've now escalated to paramilitaries, took up position outside a bar in Roanoke, Texas today, while children were handed over. Are you kidding me with this? Handed over to drag queens inside. Like, what?
It's insane.
Steve, was anybody handing over kids to drag queens? Was that happening?
No. What? The fuck? What is this? Like, he's making it seem, like I said in my tweet, like there's some fucking human trafficking operation that's going on.
That's what it sounds like.
One of the family members that owns the distillery, one of their children performed in the drag show and organized the drag show. This isn't, it's just disgusting what they're doing.
Paramilitaries that we've now escalated to.
It's disgusting that they're trying to target this family who is celebrating one of their family members, the culture that they're involved in, and doing it in a way that the Texas comptroller came by because people complained and said, this is a sexually oriented business or this, that, or the other. And they said, no, actually, you pass. Like, looks like a fun event. People seem to be enjoying themselves. I'm not quoting them on that, but it's just they will try to hurl any accusation at this event as if they were trying to say that they were giving children drinking age bans, as if they were like gonna start giving like whiskey to kids or something.
Oh, good God.
They're really trying to do anything. And now what's unfortunately kind of expected is that the mayor of this town is like more or less saying, well, there weren't any laws broken here, but we sure would like if there were. And they're like trying to get this, like they're trying to, make it so that it can't happen again. They're condemning it and, basically saying this doesn't reflect the values of Roanoke. So it's unfortunate that, this stuff that has been happening for years, these events that have been happening for years that, don't have any track record of what these people are claiming that they have, are now becoming targeted. Meanwhile, the Southern Baptist Convention is getting investigated by the feds for sexual abuse scandals, a whole slew of them.
Wow.
And I made this joke on the internet. If these people who were, providing security to the event were truly pedophile defenders, then why aren't they outside the Southern Baptist Convention?
No.
What's going on here?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, listen, they put up that guy, Matt Getz, is like being investigated right now for trafficking underage girls. Like, it's amazing that
they're going to be speaking at a youth summit in Texas later this year.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So they are ignoring actual acts of pedophilia, and instead they're trying to make it about their homophobia, because that's exactly what it is. It's their own.
There's a credible investigation going on in one instance where people might at least pause about it, and then there's just this totally baseless stuff that they're spinning from whole cloth. It's pretty blatant, and unfortunately, I do hear sometimes people say things like, "Oh, well, why don't they just tamp down on the drag queen stuff for a little bit until it all calms down?"
I mean,
and I'm like, do you hear yourself? This has been happening for years. It's not like suddenly it's gotten more outrageous. No, it's just that the right wing has picked it up as something to be angry about.
Yeah, which is silly to me. I mean, I think drag shows are hilarious. I've been to a bazillion of them through the last couple of decades. So the idea that there's anything pedophile related with them is just ridiculous. It's more or less people dressing up in costumes and performing. And oftentimes they do really great, besides lip syncing and doing that sort of thing, they do great comedy shows too. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I was a little bit surprised when this started becoming a thing 6 months ago. Maybe I shouldn't have been, because it's really on brand for the increase in homophobia that we've been seeing.
It dovetails with every issue that you'll hear people complaining about at school boards.
Yeah, 100%. You know, so it's, and like you said earlier, it's a coalition of a lot of right-wing causes kind of conflating together. So you have the anti-vaxxers, you have the Christian nationalists, you have the, you know, the right-wing extremists as far as military Proud Boys, whatnot. They're all sort of coming together and coalescing around this one thing right now. And I often said this, you know, in the past couple of years, that once Trump was out of office and that steal the thing, not steal the election, had stopped becoming a daily thing with them, they would latch on to another new thing and they would ride that. And so I think this is just par for the course. They're going to keep doing this. This is an incredibly radicalized group of individuals that sort of came together out in the open under Trump. I think they'd already been brewing behind the scenes for a very long time. But this allowed them, and I also with social media, obviously allowed them to connect and start sharing more extreme ideas with each other. You know, QAnon would be part of that too. So I just don't think this is stopping anytime soon. I just think they're going to move from course of action to course of action. Yeah. Big sigh. So having said that, I want to shift gears and talk about Donald Trump this morning, because he's kind of admitting to being in possession of documents he should not have been in. At least his lawyer is. So let's put up this tweet. Just in, Trump's lawyers have responded to the DOJ, and it's unclear whether they understand that acknowledging their client's possession of presidential records is admitting that he did crimes. His lawyer actually had this to say: I do have firsthand knowledge. As you know, I'm down there frequently. I have never seen that. I have never, ever seen that. That is not the way his office looks. They're talking about that photo that was posted, that's been flying around Twitter, of the confidential documents strewn across the floor as an exhibit. That is not the way his office looks. Anybody that knows President Trump's office, he has guests frequently there. It's just a joke. So some of the conspiracy around this now is that I've seen right-wingers on Twitter saying this, that it's a staged photo, that didn't actually happen. The FBI staged this photo. So the attorney goes on to say they literally must have gone in and taken out documents they wanted to, or cover letters as it is, and they put it about so that the public believes this is top secret documents that were on his floor. It's ridiculous. I can tell you personally, it's ridiculous. I've never ever seen that. So, I mean, so she's admitting to there were people in and out of his office where there were confidential documents around that should have been there in the first place. People saw them. Like, this is kind of a bit of a hot mess. Where do you think this is going to go?
Well, you know, I usually hear from people who get busted in drug busts things like, Your Honor, that's not fair. When they found those drugs, they were in my trunk, closet, and attic, and they weren't all put together like that. They made it seem like it was worse than it is. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the fuck they think they're doing. It's almost as if he still thinks that he's the president. Has been saying that for a long time and has been entertaining the idea for a long time and been mingling with people who continue to say he's the president and that the election was stolen from him and that he still has presidential privileges, and that he somehow thinks that because, you know, he didn't fairly lose, that he must still be entitled to holding on to these documents. Either that or he just doesn't really fucking understand what the Presidential Records Act says. I mean, I don't really know.
I think he probably does, and he just, you know, like with everything in his life, he doesn't care because the law doesn't apply to him. He's a narcissist, in my opinion.
I mean, I think ultimately his actions are speaking louder than any of his potential intentions.
Exactly.
Frankly, I don't give a shit about what the intentions are because we don't know what they are. We can only infer them or make assumptions around them. What he's done is clearly bad, and people should deal with it accordingly.
Yeah, and then we've gone through this whole gamut of justifications for these confidential documents, top secret documents being there in the first place, right? So they've been planted, they've not been planted, they were declassified, even though he can't declassify many of these documents on his own. He doesn't have that ability. The FBI, you know, strewn them across. Like, there's been all of these various conspiracies to try to justify what happened, when the reality is he is above and beyond what he should have been allowed to do. He did it anyway. So I think, and he was given every opportunity to come correct on this, right? They originally asked him to return the documents, and he didn't do that. He didn't comply with the subpoena. So
yeah, I just hope people don't start calling it document gate or some fucking shit, because it obviously is one of the biggest scandals since Watergate. I mean, you know,
I agree.
It's probably worse. I don't know.
Yes, I think it's probably worse. And the interesting thing though now is we're in a different era than the Nixon era, right? So back in the Nixon period of time, you had Republicans that had more concern about the stability of the system, right? That protecting the system, keeping it intact was more important to them than engaging in some sort of team sports. But that's not the case anymore, Steve. I think a lot of Republicans only care, left too. I'm not going to say Democrats don't do the same thing. They absolutely do. But it's all about team sports, right? Protecting the team and the integrity of the system. It doesn't matter so much. So I think
the ones that care are,
well, they're being run out of office or they're not running again.
Yeah, there's not many of them.
There's not many of them.
There's not many of them, and they probably feel really besieged. I'm not trying to make excuses for them because, unfortunately, it's a bit craven and cowardly not to speak up at a time like this. But yeah, I think unfortunately the center of gravity has moved towards what you're describing, and we can, see a lot of factors pointing towards that conclusion. So, dealing with this, it's, there's going to be some interesting wavy stuff that happens probably, but that is to be expected given the severity and the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, I agree. And again, another wild part of the conversation is how they went after Hillary Clinton for her server. My thing is this: Hillary Clinton should have never had that server in her home. That was also out of bounds and not acceptable, and she should have been held accountable for that. But now all of a sudden, it's like my guy who's done something as egregious, if not more, should be let off the hook. Like, no, he should not be accountable for that. So again, team sports. It's really tragic that this is where we're at in the United States, where, just having integrity in the system just doesn't exist. I also think it's why people are becoming more radicalized. Lots of folks are losing trust in public institutions that really require trust. They require the public trust in order to, go about their business. Distrust of SCOTUS, distrust of Congress. And I'm not saying they're not valid reasons for this, but it is part and parcel to why things are becoming more extreme out there in the world, in my opinion.
Our current electoral system sort of force fits so much logic in that direction, given that the two-party system, first past the post voting, all of that stuff collapses people's options. And, I'm not, once again, not trying to make excuses for people. This stuff needs to get fucking changed and reformed. But when we have a system like this, we shouldn't be surprised that we're finding ourselves in situations like this where people's frustrations can't adequately be represented in the electoral system. You can't find alternatives. And, there's this collapsing of the congeniality and the sort of, whether it was real or more mythical than real, this idea of bipartisanship and shared interest. Perhaps that collapsing, is an opportunity for some other things to change and happen because, people critical of that stuff would say, well, yeah, they were collaborating on some things that weren't good, like COINTELPRO, and, they were basically collaborating to support capitalism, regardless of what that meant in, supporting third world dictators and this, that, and the other. So changes sometimes can be good and they're, often wavy, to use the word I said again. So
good word.
Yeah, it's like we just have to see the landscape for what it is and say, okay, well, how do we strategically work within it without co-opting ourselves to it? Because that, then you will just find yourself being force fit into that logic at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great way to describe it. On that note, I want to bring up a clip from Liz Harrington. So I'm going to dovetail into our next section, which is where I play clips of right-wing insanity, things that happened the week, and we kind of give it a side eye, so to speak. All right. So this is Liz Harrington.
The big question still does remain about why President Trump had these records there down at Mar-a-Lago in the first place. Is there anything you can tell us about that? I think that's kind of one thing that's still been out there, and people trying to understand that. At least the layperson is trying to understand that.
I think the key point here is the Presidential Records Act.
Mm-hmm.
Presidential. He's the president. And the fake news media is trying to pretend that he wasn't, or that he was just some, paper pusher like these bureaucrats at the National Archives. No, he's the president. He is correspondent. He had every right to keep whatever he wants. and possess whatever he wanted to. And obviously, when he left the White House, he took some documents with him. It was his prerogative.
Okay.
Is it though?
I see that the Presidential Records Act understander has logged on.
Right? No, it's like, yeah, no, that's not his prerogative. So these guys really believe that their guy is above the law. I don't know how they can take offense to being called fascist at this point.
I mean, and it's like, it's almost like Freudian, where she continues to say he is the president. It's not he was the president. He is the president.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
kind of tense message is that? What are you doing?
No, he's for perpetuity president. We're just going to put him in office and have him stay there and yay, my freedom. I don't know. These folks are wanted to play this flashback clip because it's a doozy. Ryan Nichols.
So yes, today, Ryan Nichols grabbed his fucking weapon and he stormed the Capitol and he fought for freedom. For election integrity. I fought.
So these guys love to admit their crimes in video. They present the FBI, they do these selfies and they present the FBI with like, here it is. I admitted to it. Here I am doing it. Here you go. I think this is a prime example of that.
Yeah, love to just leave really detailed notes of all the crimes I commit. Love doing that. It's just legally the best thing that you can do if you intend on committing federal crimes. But I mean, I think what these clips really illustrate to me, non-jokingly, is that these people thought that they were doing something historic. They were quite literally comparing themselves to the fucking founding fathers. And they thought that they were going to have some sweet documentary sizzler clip shit that they could go home and share with all their friends whenever they had created the Sixth Reich or whatever the fuck they're trying to do. It's sad.
It is sad. So he has all these charges, actually arrested in Tyler, Texas. So it's interesting because now we see these folks that originally it was released that they were being charged with these offenses. We're now seeing their court cases and their criminal proceedings and sentencing is happening. So it's some of these guys are getting hit with some serious amount of time, as they should, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. So there was a newly released video that also came out this week from inside Jeff Merkley's office on January 6th. I wanted to play that.
Hey! Yeah, no stealing. No stealing. No stealing. You can't be on the ship. Stop the stealing. Why would I want to steal this bullshit? This whole place is some bullshit, huh? Wait till another area. Start everywhere. Hey, I like myself, brother.
So they're in there putting their feet up on the desk, screaming, stop the steal, smoking cigars. What's happening here?
Once again, fantasies trying to play themselves out. Like I don't know if you saw that one meme photo from Sri Lanka where someone was like smoking a joint in the pool of the presidential palace after people had stormed it.
Yeah, I did see that.
No, I think maybe they were thinking they would do something cool like that. No.
It's just wild. No. All right, so now I want to turn to John Voight because he had something to say about the search warrant.
My fellow Americans, can we all speak truths so we can see the lie that was brought upon our President Trump? And the ones who once were on his side are now finding wrong with the documents. Can we see this lie? Did they ever attack Obama's home or Clinton's? And why not? Because President Trump knows that the swamp are all lies, and he once drowned them. And they're all afraid you will see the truths. Wake up, America. See this lie. And we must see this as similar to President Kennedy's files. My friends, the deceit will surely die, for no man shall turn truths for their ego, for their unrighteousness. because our witness will surely condemn this war. A third world war, yes. It's been turned into a war.
Okay, that is one hell of a word salad. Let's start with that. I'm not entirely clear on what all of his points are, to be frank.
I
Why
couldn't
is he
really follow, to be honest.
President Kennedy's files? I absolutely do not understand that reference at all. Like, how is this the same? What is he referring to? No idea.
I mean, I really hope he's not referring to some of the like QAnon JFK is secretly not dead shit.
Oh,
I really hope he is not doing that. It's either that or like he's making some conspiratorial point, obviously. But I just I want to know what it is, but I really don't want to know what it is.
Right. So for folks that don't know about the JFK thing, it was a QAnon thing for a while. They were camped out actually down there in Texas because they're
still like going. Like this group still exists. The group still exists. Like they are still going to Trump rallies and like they come back to Dallas every now and then. Recently, one of them got kicked out of a hotel. It's a mess. It's a mess.
So they're basically saying JFK Jr. is still alive and that he never died in that plane crash.
Also JFK. They believe that both JFK. Of them are secretly alive.
Why?
Well, they believe that they are secretly working with Trump and also a bunch of other secretly alive celebrities like Michael Jackson to take down the satanic global Marxist pedophile cabal.
Right. So everything is about the satanic global Marxist pedophile cabal, which, yeah, let's be honest, it's very anti-Semitic. But you're not wrong. Okay, so QAnon is just its own special little mess.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's like that's even like a niche mess within the broader mess.
It is a niche mess. It's just crazy. All right, I wanted to play this clip from a former MAGA Republican candidate from Las Vegas.
So if you think COVID-19 has gone away, you're just like fooling yourself. COVID-19 has not gone away. And this winter, 4,000 to 20,000 Americans will die. I'm just letting you know what's going to happen. Because you know what happened last winter. You know what happened winter before. The COVID hasn't gone away. And many Christians believe that COVID-19 is punishment of God for homosexuality in America. And that's why God killed 1 million plus Americans through COVID. Got serious about Romans chapter 1 and book of Genesis. So people are saying, until COVID-19 or homosexuality is illegalized in the United States of America, America can expect God to punish America, send plague after plague. And COVID-19 is only like the first plague.
Is he in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
What the fuck? What is he doing on the Strip? What's happening? There's so much happening here.
There's so much happening here. Also, like when I first saw this, I was like, the plague is against homosexuals, yet it wasn't only homosexuals that died from this plague that was supposed to punish them. And then he kind of shifts gears and says it's just punishing America in general because we allowed, homosexuals to exist in the country. I don't know, man. These guys are so radicalized.
It's it's whether it's Seven Mountains shit or Dominionist shit or like apocalyptic millenarian garbage. I mean, there's choose your flavor. It's all kind of moving in that direction.
The Christian nationalism is become very worrisome to me. It's always been there on the fringe, but now it's sort of infiltrating much more across the right wing. I've seen posts recently for some folks saying like, they're saying that we're the intolerant ones, but why do we have to tolerate their sin? And it's like, well, number one, sin is your concept. It doesn't belong to everybody else's religion or everybody else. So that's just that's you deciding that this was a bad thing, right? That's what sin is. And if your idea of sin is taking away other individuals' civil liberties, there is a problem with that. We absolutely do not have to tolerate you trying to infringe on everybody else's civil liberties based on your religious beliefs. That's not what the country was set up on. The country was set up on religious tolerance, which means you have to accept everybody else's religious beliefs, not just your own. That's how it functions.
I mean,
thank you for attending my TED Talk.
But look, Dan Patrick told me that God wrote the Constitution.
Wait, you literally wrote the Constitution?
Yeah, at CPAC. He said God wrote the Constitution. Like I can pull up the. Let me just pull up the quote.
Yeah, I believe you.
I want to read it. I want to
Yeah.
read it. It says, "We are a nation founded not upon the words of our founders, but upon the words of God, because He wrote the Constitution." And then he led the crowd in prayer.
You know, interestingly enough, I covered the Modesto Straight Pride rally last weekend, and a Proud Boy from Sacramento Proud Boys led the group in a 3-minute prayer. Like, so weird.
Yeah, patriot prayer, huh? How about that?
It was a very anti-homophobic, obviously. Also, we're now tying this into abortion rights, obviously, because of the recent overturning of Roe v. Wade. It's all sort of, coming together. All right, Blake Masters. Blake Masters he's pretty extreme. I pulled 2 clips this week. I want to start with the first one. Let's go ahead and play that.
Well, we got to talk about guns.
You know what? The Second Amendment scares me. I know you're probably like me. You believe that it was created for hunting and sporting rifles, and no. I think I've seen you a lot. This is a big reason why I became a supporter of you early on. I think one of your very first videos, you were showing an SBR, and you said this weapon was not made for hunting. Right. This weapon is designed to kill people. And at the end of the day, that's what the Second Amendment's about. It's about your ability to defend yourself. It's about your ability to resist tyranny. And that's why I think that we have got to, I think we need to abolish the ATF or really heavily limit them, because really they regulate my 3 favorite things: alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
All right, so at least he's being honest about the fact that this type of weapon is designed for one purpose. He's not fooling around here to kill people. We're not hunting with it, whatnot. But what do you think of that? Small, armed guerrilla resistance. Was that really the intention?
I mean, look, I don't know what the fuck these guys think the intention was. Maybe it was, what did Jefferson say about the tree of liberty and blah, blah, blah. And I love to quote that thing. But I have this sneaking suspicion that these people who talk in this language wouldn't survive a day in the world that they think that they want to create. It's just so sad.
You're not wrong there. Look at how they're losing their mind over Antifa being armed, right? That is the world that they're helping to create, right? This is their idea, like guns for everybody, Second Amendment, yay, no restrictions. And then when they actually see that come to fruition, they lose their mind.
Yeah, people like this often think they have the monopoly on the idea of what it means, to have liberty, or what the definition of a family is, or things like guns. And It's jarring to them whenever they see things that challenge that sense of monopoly. It is interesting to watch them kind of, come up with the reasoning for why this is happening to comfort themselves without actually changing their frame of logic.
Exactly. So Blake Masters, he's running for Senate, Republican, obviously. He's been receiving a lot of funding from Peter Thiel, who is, again, a very right-wing extremist guy. This is a guy that wants anarcho-capitalism. This is libertarian stuff on speed. Let's go seastead out in the ocean so that we get outside of government laws. He's the guy that took down Gawker because he didn't like that they published some unflattering piece about him being gay. At least he saw it that way. He didn't want to come out of the closet. So why is Peter Thiel funding this guy, do you think? Is it just the libertarian stuff, or is that expanding? Because for me, it feels bizarre that somebody that is open and now openly gay would want to fund right-wing extremists in this way that are against gay marriage, against, calling people groomers and pedophiles and whatnot.
Right. I think it's there's probably too much that I would like to say, to be able to say it on this podcast without facing potential litigation. So I'll just leave it at that.
That's fair. I mean, listen, Peter, he also helped fund Palantir, which is, software that's used by law enforcement to, more or less spy on folks.
And for those who, do you know what the word Palantir, do you know where that comes from, what that reference is?
Mm-hmm.
Seen Lord of the Rings, or you read the books at all?
Yeah.
You know the orb that the evil wizard has?
Is that called Palantir?
That's the fucking Palantir.
I didn't know
the fucking Palantir. These nerds are so obsessed
that sort of text, doesn't it?
With their like weird obsessions that they like telegraph their intentions by being like, yeah, let's name our company after the orb that if you look into it, Sauron might possess you. Like, super fucking cool.
That's
awesome.
Just nuts. All right, so I wanted to play a second clip from Blake Masters. And again, if people aren't realizing this, he's speaking to Madison Cawthorn. So just to clarify, so we have double your duty right-wing extremists right here.
So I think you're so right. You said God-shaped hole in the size, or in the human heart, and I think there is a religious impulse.
Yes.
Right, and I think I happen to believe, I'm a Christian too. I think that's God, trying to pull us back to Him in some sense. But for the militant atheists, for the secular liberals, progressivism, right? That's become the new atheist church.
Yes,
and it's doing all the same work. And you have the sacrificial liturgies, and I think this is why the left is so obsessed with abortion, right? It's the sacrificial ritual, and it's ghastly, right?
Is he serious? He's basically saying the act of abortion is a ritual that the left is doing, a religious ritual.
Yeah, that's just blood libel. That's just warmed over blood libel, because blood libel was an anti-Semitic theory, pushed by religious extremist Christians for a long time that basically said that Jews stole Christian children, usually girls, to make it even ultra scary for the fucking bigots back then, and would steal their blood for magic and shit. Yeah, it's the same shit. It's just recycled and, put into whatever frame that they're using now. And it's disgusting.
It is disgusting. I mean, my God, is he serious? I mean, is he going to say that about the 10-year-old girl that was molested and had to have, obviously she needed to have an abortion?
But did you see the Matt Walsh post about that? I'm going to have to just reiterate. This is a Matt Walsh post. Do not take this out of context. Quote from Matt Walsh: if a 12-year-old is raped by her father and the father takes her to get an abortion, the evidence of the crime will be destroyed and he will go on molesting his victim for years. If, however, the child is born, his crime will be discovered and she will be rescued from the abuse. Yeah. Buddy. Yeah,
wow.
Totally.
Wow. Do you notice what's missing from his entire scenario? The victim. He doesn't give a shit about her well-being, how this affects her mentally. None of it. It's fucking disgusting. Also, she doesn't need to be forced to give birth to that child in order for there to be evidence. Jesus, are they that stupid? Unbelievable. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to end this segment with this just hilarious Herschel Walker take.
The debate should be about the people, and I'm not sure why he won't come to debate. And I'm saying I'm going to give him, make him feel good. I even buy him a gift. I buy him a gift. I may drive him to the debate, in one of my nice cars and stuff. And I'm not going to buy him a suit because his suit costs too much. But I do whatever to get him to debate me so he can see the contrast between he and I.
I'm not going to buy him a suit that costs much, but I will give him a free ride in one of my nice cars.
It's hard for me to laugh whenever someone's clearly they're going through a mental deterioration because of their career.
All right, that's fair. I hadn't thought about that.
It's awful. It's awful, and the things that he's saying, and what I get pissed off about, and it's laughable, are the people who are putting him up to it. The people who are around him that are supporting 100%. Him. It's not that he doesn't have his own agency, and obviously he's chosen to do this, but at the same time, there are people who are aiding and abetting this situation. It's really fucked up.
So he has some concussion damage from his previous football career?
So, I mean, wasn't he also an MMA guy?
I'm not sure.
So, Walker, yeah, I am pretty sure football running back, and then, yeah,
That actually makes
he
sense.
did MMA. So, I mean, the science around this, I mean, if you're a football player who gets hit a lot, and then you go do MMA, and then there's like all these clips where it's like it is unfortunately incoherent. It's like it's hard for me to laugh at it because
that's fair.
Like I don't want to say I'm a doctor and I've diagnosed him with whatever the syndrome is that a lot of football players get now. But
yeah, no, concussions are very serious. In fact, that there was a film based on the research on that called Concussion a few years back that was quite good. Very eye-opening how the NFL wanted to bury that evidence and not protect their players, which is unfortunate. So
yeah. I mean, a lot of people they're basically saying, I'm not saying he has CTE, but ...
Okay.
And,
Good to know. Good to know. All right. So I wanted to give you a moment to tell us what else you're working on right now. Anything exciting in the works?
Oh, well, I'm working on a number of things. I unfortunately, I don't think I should talk about just yet because they're investigatory in nature. But some extremist group stuff around here, some groups that are obviously they're playing in a way that could be, breaking certain IRS laws. There's a whole number of twisted things that are going on in North Texas at any given moment, because North Texas is very much one of the epicenters of like right-wing funding and a lot of organizing in the United States. So it's definitely say keep a lookout for that stuff. I've got an article coming out tomorrow in a local newspaper about the drag brunch that occurred that we discussed. And one small exciting piece of news for me is that just yesterday I got to announce that I have effectively won a very important case, or at least at this point, just won a case in the appeals court. And I'm just going to read the statement to make sure I'm being a very good boy. But yesterday,
sued for libel, or
yeah, I had been sued for libel. And so the Tyler Court of Appeals dismissed all of the claims that Monty Bennett and the Dallas Express brought against myself and the Dallas Weekly. And they held that our statements were either protected statements of opinion or true. So I can send you the link to that article so you can put that in the show notes if people would like. And there's other articles that have come out about that since that will give people a bit more context about what happened and, who this person is and why they were trying to sue me. And, you'll also, probably be pleased to know that it's something that a bunch of grifters that we're all aware of, such as Andy No, tried to dunk on me about. So it's really nice to, have that cleared up.
He's basically, my understanding of this is he's a wealthy right-wing guy that bought a black-owned newspaper website and turned it into a right-wing propaganda thing. And you wrote about it, and then he turned around and sued you for libel. Is that basically it in a nutshell?
Yeah. The headline of my article was "Formerly Black-Owned Dallas Express Resurrected as Right-Wing Propaganda Site."
I mean, it's not untrue.
According to the Tyler Court of Appeals. So
where's the libel? That's just wild.
So yeah, it's nice. I consider it a win, and I'll just be waiting to see what happens next. Yeah, that's a nice little thing that happened this week amongst all the other things that are happening.
Exactly. Also, speaking of things that are happening this week, so I have a piece that just came out this morning in Daily Dot. Everybody should go check it out. But for those that didn't know, Rise Above Movement, RAM, this is Robert Rundo's organization, white supremacy group based out of Huntington Beach originally, arrested for their actions in Charlottesville, Huntington Beach, Berkeley. They're neo-Nazis. I don't think that's hyperbole in any way. Staged a boxing match with Patriot Front. That's right, staged a boxing match with Patriot Front here in San Diego area of California last weekend. They keep punching each other. The sub headline just writes itself in that one. Anyway, so make sure you guys check it out. Steve, where can people follow you on Twitter?
You can follow me. I got my Twitter handle here on my name thing. If anybody can see that on the screen, if you can't, it's at Steve Vanzetti. So that's SteVanzetti. Follow me there. I have some other links to stuff that I'm involved in as well, like Protean Magazine, which is a literary magazine that I publish and work on with a few other editors. And you can find the link to that Twitter account in my bio on Twitter as well. It's at Protean Mag. And I would say, yeah, that should be enough content for you to be interested in, hopefully. I know there's a lot of shit out there, so, I'll stop there.
Wow, you do great work on right-wing extremism. Thanks for joining me on the Right Wing Insanity Report this week, and have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.